Bryan, thank you for joining. How are you doing today? And what was the atmosphere like yesterday with the Dominguez and Wells situation?
It was cool. Aaron Judge said they had a little different vibe on the bus on the way over to Minute Maid Park, and you could just tell something special was happening even from minute one. Just from a media perspective, we went down to the clubhouse. We got Austin Wells first, and obviously he was all smiles and really happy to be there. And then we talked to Dominguez, and he said that he knew it was going to feel really different and special when he stepped into that batter's box for the first time. And I don't think you could write it up any better than the way it happened, with him hitting a home run into the Crawford boxes off Justin Verlander, his first pitch, his first swing in a major league game. It's just kind of a storybook. That's the way you draw it up. We've been hearing all this hype for years on Dominguez, and the comparisons, the impossible comparisons.
2016. But when you look at it right now, especially with these young kids that are coming up, Austin Wells, Jason Dominguez, I think some of us that are on this panel, when it comes to being independent content creators like myself, Nathan, Julian, Jeremy, Bobby, Mariela as well, we all got into this around. Thank you so much, Bryan. Thank you. But we all got into this around the time the Yankees first signed Jason Dominguez, first drafted Austin Wells, first drafted Anthony Volpe. So for a lot of us, we feel like we're much a part of this, just like the players themselves. Like me personally, I went down to Tampa and I saw Jason Dominguez and Austin Wells, his first game with the Tampa Bay Tarpons. I watched that whole weekend series, and he had his first home run down there with the Tampa Bay Tarpons. I got a foul ball from Jason Dominguez that till this day I'm trying to hunt this man down to sign it, because it's going to be
get him to sign it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, but Bryan, the work that you do as well, I reference a lot of your work on my show when it comes to your tweets.
Don Mattingly was my favorite guy growing up. I'm a kid of the 80s. So, Donnie Baseball was what you wanted to be when you were a little leaguer, with the eye black and the Franklin batting gloves. And so I started out it's a weird story. I started out as a Yankee fan, and the strike of 94 just broke my heart. I stopped watching baseball for like 2 years. And then so around spring training of 96, my dad was a Mets fan. My grandpa was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan who became a Mets fan, and they kind of said, "Hey, why don't you come watch the Mets with me?" They got these young pitchers coming up. They got Jason Isringhausen, they got Bill Pulsipher, they got Paul Wilson. The Mets are going to be good for a really long time. So I started watching the Mets, and I became a fan of the Mets at that time. And that's the worst possible time to leave the Yankees, because the Yankees are about to win the World Series in 1996, 1998, 1999, 2000. Those are my high school years there. So you can imagine the kind of verbal abuse I.
Yeah, Bryan, I would like to thank you for coming on. We appreciate it a lot. One thing I want to ask you about is your favorite books, Yankee books that you've read over the years. Obviously, you just came out with 62. You have a few others. And tell me about some of your favorites that you've read.
Oh my gosh, Jack Curry has done some great books. Off the top of my head, there's a great Lou Gehrig book that Jonathan Eig did that I love. I read a lot of books about 1961 and doing the research for the 62 project. So there was a great biography of Roger Maris that I really enjoyed. There was the one that Tony Kubek did, talking about the 1961 season, where I got so much great information from that one. So, but I would say that Jack Curry's book, Joel Sherman did a book, Buster Olney on the last night of the Yankee dynasty. Obviously I'm in Houston. I can't show you my bookshelf now, but it is packed with Yankee books. And
I was a little bit after you, but I mean, my favorite player growing up was Tino Martinez right after Mattingly, but him and Andy Pettitte. But no, I mean, I would just say, through the years, I mean, I've been reading the 62 book, but I mean, besides Judge, I would say who out of the years, and who would you say is the one player that stuck out the most to you, the most interesting? I mean, now that I think about it, probably A-Rod, but besides A-Rod, but who else do you think would be like interesting to cover? Who was interesting that you covered throughout the time?
Man. I would say that my first year on the Yankee beat was 2007. So it's at the end of the Joe Torre era. You still got the core four there. Bernie wasn't there, unfortunately, but I just knew that covering Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera, I knew these guys were headed to Cooperstown. These were going to be the Joe DiMaggio and Whitey Ford of their generation, and Mickey Mantle. It was going to fit in that legacy there. So even when you were watching them do their stuff day by day and trying to win games for the Yankees in real time.
What I was going to say is, compared to the I want to call it the baby bombers, the original baby bombers with Judge, Greg Bird, Gary Sanchez, those guys, how do you feel this now baby bombers 2.0? How do you feel the optimism and the excitement is around this group compared to that group?
Yeah, I think there's optimism. Oh boy, I mean, what happened to Baby Bombers 1? I mean, Judge obviously became what we thought he was going to be, but then Severino has dealt with so many injuries, and Greg Bird. I mean, he had those great moments in the postseason, but just could not stay healthy. And Gary Sanchez. Let's remember that when Gary came up, he was the hype. I feel like there was so much around Gary Sanchez for years and years, and it's kind of the same as it was with Dominguez, where he was a teenager signed for big money, and then we kind of heard the name Gary Sanchez for years and years, and until he finally got there, and he was everything we thought he was going to be in the beginning. I mean, he was basically a power hitting catcher.
Bryan, thanks as always. It's always great to talk and catch up and everything. Happy you got to see the debut. So how crazy was that experience? And something I thought was fitting was about like Harrison Bader, how he had high praise for Jason Dominguez, and now he ends up setting the way for Dominguez. I thought it was kind of ironic because they worked together a lot in Somerset and spring training.
Yeah. I mean, Bader, I feel like he's one of those guys who really did appreciate being a Yankee, and he talked about it, being a kid from Bronxville and how significant for him it was. And he said, once a Yankee, always a Yankee. So even though he's back in the National League Central now, I think he's always going to treasure. And I wouldn't completely close the door on Bader coming back at some point. So who knows? But I think that the time is now to give Dominguez a look. He has definitely earned the opportunity. And I'm curious if the Yankees were the team we thought they were going to be, and if they were competing for the division here, I don't think they I'm going to give you one more on Derek. So I used to live on the Upper East Side, and I would go to the Starbucks at, I think it was 84th and 2nd. And one day I'm walking in there, and Derek Jeter's walking out, and he's like, "Hey, buddy." And I was like, what are you doing here? Like, why? How is this even happening? He had double parked there on his way up to the stadium. And it was just kind of like, what a crazy New York moment that was. And I walked into Starbucks to get my order, and I was just like, did you guys see that Jeter was here? And nobody cared. I was like, this is New York City. And everybody's just so busy with their day that they don't even notice when the shortstop of the Yankees walks in to get his coffee on the way to Yankee Stadium. So I always regret not asking Derek for a ride to the stadium just to see the look on his face, what he would have said if I had asked him, "Hey man, I'm on my way to the subway, but can you just give me a ride to the stadium?" I wish I had asked him, but so, and then I'm sorry, I forgot the other question.
More about your career. Obviously, a great career so far. Amazing resume you have. Obviously, Yankees beat writer. But I want to ask you, outside of all the interviews you've done, what would be your most memorable interview you've done with the Yankees player or another player?
Ooh, most memorable. I would say I'm a fan of baseball history.
Yeah.
Like, I think you guys can tell that. And so I kind of like the old timers even better than the current players, if that makes sense. So the one that comes to my mind here is I had a sit down with Whitey Ford for like 20 minutes at Yankee Stadium one day. And we were in the press conference room, and I just got to ask Whitey Ford anything I wanted. And I came away from that thinking like, what, that was awesome. Like, I just sat down with Frank Sinatra. Like, that's what it felt like. I was like, that's the chairman of the board. Like, that is the old Yankees. And obviously, Mickey's gone now, and now currently Yogi's gone. But at the time, I got
about the performance this year of the Yankees, and what can we expect next year?
Oh, it's been terrible. It's been a real disappointment. I mean, there's been a few bright spots here and there, but if you look up and down the roster, there's not many guys you would point to and say they had a better year than I thought they were going to have. And most guys have been worse than you thought, and that's why they're in the situation they're in. So I think that it's smart. It's the time is right for them to take a look and see what they have in the farm system. I'm excited. Look, I didn't want to watch another month like August either. I didn't want to write the same Yankees lose recap every time. So I thought they should have sold at the deadline. I didn't understand what they were doing there. I know that they kind of got caught in the middle, and they weren't sure if they were in the race or not. But from the outside looking in, I thought they were out, and I thought they should have traded a guy like Bader on August 1st. So that's not a second guess. I said that in real time. So I didn't understand.
How you doing? Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time, man. I had a question for you. I mean, you made a good point too. Like, you're pointing out the obvious, which is something to the degree of like the underperforming veterans. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I like to emphasize, I think, is the Yankees have not had an offensive prospects like in the farm this deep in a while, right? And most notably, guys that can play multiple positions, versatility. And I think moving forward, they could use that in a way to keep infusing youth without having to sign expensive free agents, right? Yeah. So like Austin Wells, he can replace Anthony Rizzo at first base, and then you have a guy like Ben Rice who they could plug in a catcher. So they can still infuse the young guys. And I think, can you see them doing that and maybe loading up on pitching with more starters to surround Cole? That's where they're going to invest their money while continuing to build like the kind of.
Every time the Yankees or someone that's affiliated with the Yankees, anytime they bring up chicken parmesan, you should take a shot. Right. Last night on the broadcast, they referenced it 17 times while watching the game during the game. So over the weekend, if you want to have fun, just take a shot anytime you hear someone brings up the word chicken parm, Bryan.
I'm sorry for bringing that out. It's crazy how that took off. Yeah. Like, I was the one who asked that question. And I just was looking for a detail for the story because he said they had dinner with Wells. And so, of course, I want to know what, it's good color for the story. I didn't know it was going to take off and become the sensation that it did. And, I actually talked to Volpe about it maybe like a month ago. And I said, like, looking back on it, how crazy is it that became a T-shirt? Like, people are doing it. And he's a little uncomfortable with it. I think he was kind of like a little shy of all the attention that it got, I think, in some ways. Like, to him, it was.